across the sole, 1 row of knitting with the scrap yarn. And then we'll go back and knit it again with the regular yarn. And that'll make 1 row of stitches in a contrasting color. Always use a contrasting color so you can find it. Some people also like to use a different fiber, like a cotton yarn or something that's really smooth, so it's easy to pick out later. I find that using the same yarn is okay, as long as it's a really clear contrasting color so you can easily see where you put the scrap yarn in. So what we're going to do is, again, we're going to work the heel on half of the stitches. You can work this heel on up to 60% of the stitches if you need a deeper heel or a little bit more room in the instep of the sock. But the traditional way to do it is on 50% or half of the stitches. So again, with 48 in my sample, I'm going to go across to 24 sole stitches with the scrap yarn. And I'm not going to attach the scrap yarn in any way. I'm not going to tie it on or anything because it's going to come out later. So I don't need it to be secured onto the knitting. I'm just going to knit across. And it's nice if you have all of the sole stitches that you're going to use for the heel opening on a separate needle. It could be double points as I have, or you could be working on circular needles or magic loop. It works on any of those. But if you have half of the stitches in a separate section, that's really nice. It's easy to keep track. Now, if you're working on a double pointed needle or 2 circular needles, you can just go back to the beginning of that needle, to the other side of it, and we'll knit those stitches again. If you're working on a magic loop, you'll have to slip those stitches back onto the left needle so that you can knit them again, because you don't have both ends of your needle free to slide them to the other end. But you could see what I did on the double point is I just slid them across. Now I'm just going to tuck the tails of this scrap yarn inside to get them out of the way. If you're worried that it's going to come out, you can tie the ends in a knot. I left long enough tails on them, and mine is made out of wool, so I'm not worried that it's going to slip out of the stitches. So I just tuck the ends inside to get them out of the way for now. And then what I'm going to do is just knit into those stitches again. Now remember, when I showed you the first opening, I said that you may be starting a pattern stitch all around the leg after the heel opening, even if the foot of the sock is plain, and the bottom of the foot is always plain. So, and we'll do that even if we're continuing a pattern on the front of the leg that came from the top of the foot. Patterning on the leg, and you can see that I had the stockinette stitch on the foot, and I've got a plain round after the heel opening, and then I have this little eyelet pattern that goes up the leg in my ribbing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to carefully pick out my scrap yarn, and I'm going to put the stitches onto needles. I can put them onto double pointed needles. I can put the stitches on the bottom on one circular needle and the stitches on the top on another circular needle, or I can put the stitches on the bottom on top on the 2 ends of one circular needle for the magic loop technique. You can use any of those techniques to knit this heel. I'm going to do it in double points because that's what I'm most comfortable with. So first thing is just finding those ends that I tucked inside and pulling it out. Once you have the end and you've pulled it out, you can see the stitches where the yarn is going through, and you can insert one needle into the stitch, and I like to just do it as I go along. I'm going to have several needles going here. So I'm going to have one needle that I'm going to put into the stitches on the top. And again, these can be double point circulars or 2 ends of a long circular for magic loop. But I'm going to use another needle or a tapestry needle just to be picking that yarn out. I find it easier to use something like that rather than trying to just pick it out with my fingers. So as I go on each side, I'll expose more loops of stitches that I'll just stick my needle into. Now, one of the new needles into that, and then I just keep picking. So you just do that all the way across until you have all the stitches out and onto knitting needles. And I like to pick up all the way into that very last loop that the yarn is going through, even though you might not consider that a live stitch because it's kind of on the side. But having those extra loops on the needles at the side edge helps close up any holes that you might get on the corners when you begin to knit the heel.